today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about
why is it that your partner keeps saying you just don't hear them or you don't understand them? Why does that keep coming up? When we're emotionally intelligent, not only do we have the emotions, but we know when and how to express them so that they are heard. We're in control of ourselves. We're not in control of the other person. We're not in control of the world. But what we can manage is what happens between our own ears. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship, and I am your host, Rich Heller, and today we are going to talk about why emotional intelligence matters in relationships. And really, what that's about is, do you ever wonder why small arguments turn into major fights, or why your best intentions sometimes backfire with your partner? Like sometimes you say something and they just hear something else, and vice versa. Why is it that your partner is saying, you're just not hearing what I'm saying to you? Why is it that maybe you're saying, or maybe they're saying, you don't understand where I'm going with this? And the answer is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is a fancy, trumped up word for this. All right. Here is the basis of emotional intelligence. Where your emotional attention is where you will go. And we're going to talk about that some more. What does it mean to have your attention somewhere emotionally? And how could you possibly shift that attention? Have you ever wished you could stay calm, cool, and collected during a fight? Or if not calm, cool, and collected, at least feel like you're managing your own emotions. That it's the difference between, does the emotion have you? Do you feel like you are in this uncontrollable wave of emotion that you just have to go with? Or do you feel like you're having the emotion, like you can channel the emotion and use it in a way that's constructive? This is basically what EQ is all about. EQ is about learning how to manage our own emotional state. It doesn't mean we're going to control our emotions. It doesn't mean that we're going to be paragons of virtue. It means that sometimes we're going to feel angry, but maybe we're not going to act on it. It means sometimes we're going to feel sad or hurt, and we're going to look for the appropriate moment to express that, as well as anger. When we're emotionally intelligent, not only do we have the emotions, but we know when and how to express them so that they are heard, and so that we're not using them as a blunt object to beat someone else over the head with. That's what EQ, emotional intelligence, is all about. And we get there by getting that we're in control of ourselves. We're not in control of the other person. We're not in control of the world. We're not in control of situations. But what we can manage is what happens between our own ears. We can't decide what we're going to feel, but we can decide what feelings we are going to use to express ourselves. And that's what this episode is about. The core components of emotional intelligence, the core components are self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. And we're going to talk about each of those. Why does it start with self-awareness? Because if we're not aware of what's going on inside of us, we can't manage it. If we're not aware of what we're feeling and why, which is what the last episode was all about, if we're not aware what in our history has led us to have this particular unconscious reaction, then we can't manage it. We're going to, instead of going from 0 to 10, we're going to go from 0 to 60. We're going to overreact. But when we have the self-awareness, and we spent a lot of time in the last episode talking about how to have that self-awareness, when we have that self-awareness, we won't react in ways that we'll regret later. When we have that self-awareness, we notice the triggers and we manage them before they manage us. Here's a tip, all right? We have a tendency to go through our day not really being aware of our emotions, but we're focused on what is it we're trying to do. We have a tendency to go through our day, today I need to do my podcast, instead of, how am I going to be in my podcast? How do I need to feel in my podcast? What are the emotions that I need to have in my podcast? Well, I may have some anxiety about whether I'm going to do it right, but and I acknowledge that, but what's the real feeling? The real feeling is my motivation to help, my motivation to serve, my motivation to learn and grow through doing the podcast as well. Like I learn so much doing these podcasts with you, right? And when I'm in that place, it's an awesome podcast, and it's good for me and it's good for you. That's where we want to be in our day-to-day life. We want to be aware of what are we feeling. So check in with yourself. How are you feeling? And particularly at transition points, right? If you're moving from one thing to the next, you want to look at how did I feel while I was doing the other thing? And how do I feel now moving into this other doing? Remember that life is a state of be, do, have. Behavior, how we behave, has to do with how we're being emotionally and the experience we want to have. That's why it's behavior. Behavior. And when we behave in a way that feels right, good, and authentic, we have an experience that's positive and strong, even if the being is one of fear or a negative emotion. When we behave that emotion to create a specific result, we're managing our emotion, we're utilizing it to get to that place where we want to be, to have the result that we're looking to have. When we have the emotion without knowing it or thinking about it, very often it overrides the experience. And that's when we have that fight that never ends. That's when people are reacting in ways that surprise us because we're not conscious and cognizant of what we're putting out. But when we're conscious and cognizant of what the emotion that the place we're being, what we're putting out, everything becomes more manageable. Self-regulation, number one. Self-awareness, number one, is knowing the emotion. Self-regulation is when we are having an unconscious reaction that is larger than the circumstance calls for, whatever the emotion. Because we have the self-awareness, we can pause. Maybe we can have that overreaction without acting it out. Maybe we can be in that experience without having to act it out with our partner or other people and process it. Self-regulation is how much emotion do I want to show here and to what end? The best diplomats, for example, are very self-aware and are regulating themselves really well. And part of what makes them effective is the third piece, empathy. If you feel like you're struggling to understand your partner's point of view, this is the key right here. And this is what makes a diplomat successful. I want you to think of yourself as an ambassador or a diplomat in your marriage. What is the other person experiencing? Where are they coming from? If you say something that seems fairly mundane to you and you feel that you were in the right emotional space when you said it, and they still have a reaction that seems much larger than what you were putting out there should have evoked, think about what's going on for them. Clearly they are what? Triggered. Clearly that somehow you maybe inadvertently pushed their button. What button is it? And if it's your partner, you might even have an idea. If it's your partner, you've met their mom, you've met their dad, you've met their brothers, you've met their sisters, you know their family, and you have a pretty good idea what button you might have pushed. And if you don't, it's worth asking them. And that goes into the next and the last piece, which is social skills. If you feel like your conversations are if you feel like your conversations are going nowhere with your partner, it's because your empathy and your social skills aren't hooked up. Right? When you have empathy and you know that you've triggered them, it might be as simple as saying, "Wow, sweetheart, I really didn't mean to go to that place with you. When I said that the dishwasher hadn't been emptied, I was really just thinking out loud that maybe I needed to empty it. I wasn't criticizing you." I have a thing about the dishwasher. Obviously, because it's come up in 3 episodes now. I'm running the dishwasher as we speak, and I'm going to make sure I empty it. Our social skills are going to lay out to them what our intention was and lay out to them that maybe their reaction isn't what we expected and ask them, hey, what's going on here? And they might say, you're always criticizing me about the dishwasher. I've been working all day long and you want me to empty the dishwasher? And you're going to say, No, actually, I was thinking I'm going to empty the dishwasher. I really wasn't thinking about you at all. I was thinking out loud, and I'm so sorry. And well, thank you for working so hard. Tell me about, while I empty the dishwasher, why don't you tell me about your day? Right? That would be social skills with empathy. They might even have a little compassion thrown in. All right. So your four biggest EQ pals, your EQ tools are: one, self-awareness; two, regulation of our own emotional state; three, this is big, empathy. It ain't all about us, it's about them too; and four, social skills, through which we can express our empathy, concern, love, and understanding for the other person. Or maybe we're expressing our own frustration or our own negative emotions. And when we have social skills, we can express negative emotions in a way that doesn't feel threatening to the other person, or feels minimally threatening. Because let's face it, sometimes people don't want to hear negative emotions, right? But if we do it using I statements, go back a couple episodes, I statements, or go to our website, richinrelationships.com. There's a whole piece on I statements there. I'm feeling sad when you mentioned that the dishwasher hasn't been emptied, because in my household, when the dishwasher wasn't emptied, my mom and dad had a huge fight. And so it brings that up for me. Then they understand, using an I statement, I'm feeling the situation and what it is about me that triggers that feeling. All right. Not going to beat that one to death. So here's why EQ matters more than IQ. IQ is intelligence in logistics of getting things done in the world. It might be math intelligence. It might be the written word intelligence. It might be engineering intelligence. It's about making things happen. But EQ matters more because guess what? Being right almost never leads to resolution. Being happy, wanting to be happy, is going to lead to resolution faster than being right. And EQ helps us to focus on connection rather than winning the argument. When we get into an argument and we try and engage in IQ in the argument, which is about the facts of the argument, and ignore the emotional side, we will lose every time. So let's go back to the dishwasher. I have emptied the dishwasher the last 8 out of 10 times. Fact. Well, I may win that argument, and I have it logged into my phone. And let's go through it. I'll show you, and we might even prove ourselves right by using our intellectual intelligence. But we will lose the war because the other person's feeling, as I gave in my I statement example, actually isn't about the dishwasher. It's about some old emotion. When we have EQ, we're aware that what's being fought over often is an old emotion. And when we have self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills, when we're exercising these four qualities of EQ, we're going to no longer feel overwhelmed emotionally. We're going to no longer feel hijacked. We're going to feel like we can go where we want to with our partner. It allows us to stay calm under pressure and make it easier to de-escalate conflicts. And here's the thing. You may be sitting there saying, well, why do I have to do all the EQ work? And you don't. But somebody has to take the lead. And I guess I'm going to throw this in here. This is really important. As a rule, women tend to have greater EQ than men, as a rule. And that's because of the way women's brains are wired. They tend to be more family ecology, not planetary ecology, though they might have that going on too. They're more aware of the emotional states around them, and men tend to be more linear. However, because most women have been competing in a male dominated world, they tend to set aside those strengths and focus on EQ. And so this is both a pitch to women to lean into your natural, innate ability to be aware of the emotions of others. And men, you need to get, because you are in a world that is transitioning from male dominated to balanced, that you had it really easy. All right. All of your competitions have been based on right and wrong. Who knows the most? How do we get here from there? And you need to work even harder on your emotional intelligence, even though your brain our sorry little brains aren't as well wired for it as women. We need to work at empathy in particular. Men, empathy is the magic key for us in having a happy life, happy wife. All right. The expression happy life, happy wife doesn't mean that we always give in to her. The expression happy life, happy wife means that we learn to have empathy and what makes her happy. We should do a whole episode on the myth of happy life, happy wife another time. All right. So developing EQ. Let's talk about how this works. Are you ready to strengthen your emotional intelligence? It all begins with awareness. We talked in the last episode about using journaling and or meditation and or mindfulness and or prayer to reflect on your emotions and identify recurring patterns in your behavior. If you want to know more about this, go back to the last episode, listen to that episode. We give it to you in detail. If you're struggling to manage your emotions during conflict, self-regulation is a skill you can build. It's about setting an intention. Set an intention each morning to practice patience and remain calm during stressful moments. And men in particular, if you're compartmentalizing emotions in order to practice patience, make sure that you set an intention to express those emotions to someone in the course of the day. Because what will happen, what has been happening, is you've been compartmentalizing until the freaking volcano explodes. And that's not going to work. Right? You need to set an intention to release the emotion at the appropriate time in the appropriate way, whether it be with a coach or a therapist, or whether it be in writing, or whether it be in a video, or whether it be in a group, or wherever, whether it be when you're shooting hoops, you need to release it somewhere. If you don't release it, it's going to build up and you're going to go back to square one. You need to build empathy through active listening. All right. But actually, if you want to understand your partner better, it isn't just about listening without interrupting and using that active listening skill that we talked about a couple of episodes ago, where you reflect back one emotion and one fact that you hear. It's also about this. I want you, if you're having trouble with empathy, I want you to, when you're reading books, really think about the characters in the books and who they are. Or even while you're watching a program, think about the characters in the program, and does the way that they're behaving, is it consistent with who they seem to be presenting as? You're going to find that a lot of people in stories, they're a well-written story, they're going to be emotionally in sync with their actions. A poorly written story, usually by a man, it's not going to be so well in sync. Like I'm reading right now, what is it? I'm reading like the sixth book in the Fire and Ice series, and there's not a lot of emotional development. It's written by a man. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of plotting. There's a lot of, it's a Game of Thrones series. There's a lot of plotting and manipulation and chess. It's very, but not super emotional. And the characters, there's some characters who have some emotional development, but they're not. When you read a book written by a woman, you're going to find there's a lot more emotional development. In fact, as a man, you just might feel like this is kind of girly, but it's worth it for you to read. It's, you know what? Watch some chick flicks, all right, and get into the emotional side of it. Just like push on this on your. This isn't a guy thing stuff. Like break out of that box and make an effort to understand where the other half is coming from, men. More important than active listening, I want you to improve your social skills with intentional communication. All right. That means first decide what is the emotional state and the emotion that you're going to express. Second, how are you going to express it? Like the way that you express it has a lot to do with what you're feeling. If you say, I really love you, I love you so much, do you think she's going to get that? Probably not. Right. It's about, all right, am I being the emotion that I want to express? And think about, who are they? All right. In terms of social skills, am I expressing love in a way that they can receive it? You might want to read the 5 love languages. All right. That talks about ways that people receive love. Sometimes we receive love not just with words. Sometimes it's touch. Sometimes it's gifts. Sometimes it's acts of service. Sometimes it's quality time. I want you to work at transforming your relationship through EQ. I know that you want your relationship to feel easier and more fulfilling. Developing your EQ, actively working at it, can help you build and deepen your emotional intimacy. And at the beginning of the episode, I said, this is about where is your attention, right? If you're listening to this podcast and you go, that's great. And then you go right back to watching stuff on Facebook and watching TV and working all the time, right? And then you go and talk to your partner and things blow up. Just get that your attention is not where it needs to be. When you are with your partner or when you are thinking of being with your partner, you need to have your attention in the space where it needs to be. Our brain is made up of many different parts. And wherever our attention is, that part of our brain is going to develop. So the more we dwell in the rational and logical, the more that part of our brain is going to develop. The more we dwell in the world of entertainment, social media and screens are all developed. They're all wired to trigger our amygdala and the part of our brain that's emotional and not and addictive, emotionally addictive. They're meant to be emotionally addictive, not thoughtful. And so that's the part of our brain that's going to develop. So I want you to start, if you want to have EQ, I want you to put your attention on emotion. You can do screen time if you are consciously doing it and thinking, what practice EQ when you're doing social media? What are they trying to convey? Why are they trying to? Why is that person showing me pictures of them driving a Ferrari in the Bahamas? What are they trying to say to me? And what's the message I'm receiving? Right? Is that something I want? Is it something I don't want? Why would I want that? If I would want that, what would it mean to me to be driving a Ferrari in the Bahamas? Would it mean that I really like sunshine? Would it mean that that would be success? Would it mean that I will finally have made it? Or would it mean that then I could be one of those people who's posting posts about Ferraris in the Bahamas? I want you to be very conscious about everything you do and get that the kind of attention that you put on the things that you're looking at is going to determine your EQ. And get that EQ is your secret weapon here. When you have self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and you're building those social skills, you can build deeper connections. And guess what? You can resolve conflict creatively, right? In a healthy partnership, we aren't avoiding conflict. In a healthy partnership, we are not kicking ass and taking names. In a healthy partnership, each person is expressing their perspective, and through EQ, understanding each other's perspective, seeing where the commonalities are, and creating something new out of blending those two perspectives. It isn't my perspective is right and your perspective is wrong. There's value in each perspective. Hey, imagine if we did that in Congress right now. Imagine if the presidential candidates, who will probably, one of them is going to be elected by the time this comes out. Imagine if now when this comes out, the election's over and two of them takes office and the other one says, you know what? I really see your point of view. And I'm going to work at incorporating it into what I do because the people who supported you are as important to me as the people who supported me. Imagine if that happened instead of I'm right, you're wrong. Imagine. All right. And so this is a preview for the next episode in which we're going to explore the role of forgiveness in healing past hurts and rebuilding trust in relationships, because very often past hurts are what's getting in the way, not just in politics, but in your marriage. As always, go to richinrelationship.com for free tools. I'm Rich Heller, and have a wonderful tomorrow.